My name is Nora Vance, and I am 34 years old. 3 weeks ago, my mother knocked on my front door for the first time in 9 years. She was standing on my porch in a navy blazer she had clearly bought for the occasion, with a small rolling suitcase beside her and a single folded sheet of paper in her hand. The paper was not an apology. It was a list. Handwritten. Black ink. 5 numbered lines, each one ending in a figure. The figure at the bottom, the total, was $840,000. She did not say she had missed me. She did not ask the names of her grandchildren. She looked at me, on my own porch, and she said, "Nora, I think it is time we talked about what this family owes each other." But here is the thing my mother did not know. I had been keeping a list of my own. For 9 years, every birthday card she sent back unopened, every voicemail she let die, every message my brother forwarded to people about me that eventually found its way back to my phone. 31 items, each one labeled, each one dated. All of them filed in a dark green binder that lived in the bottom drawer of my desk. She came to my door with a list of what she wanted. I had spent 9 years building a list of what she did. Before we get into it, if you are new here, take a second to tap that like button and subscribe. It genuinely helps the channel more than you would think. And while you are here, drop a comment and tell me where you are listening from and what time it is where you are. I read every single one, and I love knowing where this story is traveling. Now, let me take you back to the spring I was 25 years old. The spring my family decided, in writing, that I was no longer one of them. I grew up in a town called Harlan Ridge, in the hills of western Pennsylvania. 3,000 people, give or take. One stoplight that everyone agreed was unnecessary. A country club at the top of the hill with a 9-hole golf course and a dining room where the same 40 families had been eating the same Friday night prime rib for 30 years. My family was one of those 40 families. My grandfather had founded the regional bank that most of the town still used. My father, Gerald Vance, ran that bank after him and sat on the boards of the hospital, the historical society, and the country club, sometimes all in the same week. My mother, Carol Vance, did not work a paid job a single day of her adult life. But she will tell you, and she has told me, that managing the Vance family's standing in Harlan Ridge was more demanding than any career. She chaired the hospital auxiliary gala. She decided which families were invited to the lake house in July and which were, politely, not. She had, by the time I was a teenager, a finely tuned internal instrument for sorting every person she met into the category of people like us and the category of everyone else. My younger brother, Brett, was 3 years behind me, and he was everything I was not, by the measure that mattered in our house. He was charming in the easy, unearned way that charming people are. He played golf with my father's clients before he was old enough to drive. He went to the right college because my father made a phone call, and he came home and took a job at the bank that had been arranged before he finished his last final exam. My mother adored him. My father called him the heir. I was the other one, the one who read at the dinner table, the one who got a perfect score on the math section of the SAT and was told, gently, that I should not make a big deal of it because it would embarrass the other children. I do not say this bitterly. I say it because you need to understand the arithmetic of my family. And in my family, approval was a fund, and Brett was the line item that always got funded first. When I was 18, I got a full academic scholarship to a strong state university 3 hours away. My mother helped me pack. She slipped a card into the side pocket of my suitcase, the kind with a watercolor of a robin on the front and her looping handwriting on the back. "Come back to us soon. This is where you belong." I kept that card for 16 years. It is in my desk drawer right now, an inch away from the green binder. It was the last genuinely warm thing my mother ever wrote to me, and I did not know that at the time. You never do. I met Daniel Okafor Reyes in a graduate statistics seminar the fall of my final year. He sat in the front row and answered the professor's hardest questions without ever sounding like he was showing off. He was quiet in a way I recognized and trusted. He was the first person in his family to finish college, let alone graduate school. His mother, Esperanza, had cleaned offices at night for 18 years and raised Daniel and his two sisters in a 2-bedroom apartment outside Pittsburgh. His father had not been in the picture since Daniel was small. Daniel was, by every measure my mother used, everyone else. He had no name. He had no club membership. His mother worked with her hands. And he was, by every measure that I had spent 25 years not being allowed to value, the most substantial person I had ever met. He listened like the thing you were saying was load-bearing. He wanted to build something real with his life, and he had not yet decided what, and he was unembarrassed about not knowing. Our first real date was at a noodle shop near campus with 11 tables and a hand-lettered menu. He paid with a debit card he checked the balance on first. I paid for the next one with a roll of quarters I had been saving in a mug. We talked until they turned the lights off on us. He told me he wanted to build a business someday that solved a problem nobody glamorous wanted to touch. I told him I wanted a job where the numbers I worked with actually meant something to real people. He said, "Then we were going into the right fields, weren't we?" We dated for 3 years. He met my parents exactly twice. The first time, my mother smiled so hard it must have hurt her face and asked Daniel 3 separate times what his father did for a living. And each time, Daniel answered politely that he had been raised by his mother. And each time, my mother said, "Oh," and changed the subject. The second time, she called him by the wrong name twice and corrected herself without apology. My father shook Daniel's hand both times and found a reason to leave the room within 10 minutes. I told myself it was an adjustment. I told myself that people from a small town just needed time. Brett was the only one honest enough to say it plainly. At Easter, he leaned across the table and said low, "He seems like a good guy, Nora. But you know Mom is never going to let this happen. You know that, right?" I did not know that. Not yet. Daniel proposed on a Sunday evening, in the kitchen of the cramped apartment we shared by then, with no ring, just a question, and both of his hands holding both of mine. He said, "I want to build a whole life with you. Will you build one with me?" I said yes before he finished. I called my parents' house that night to tell them. My mother picked up on the 4th ring. When I told her, the line went silent. I counted the seconds, 9 of them. Then she said, "You need to think very carefully about what this would mean for this family, Nora." Not congratulations. Not tell me about him. A warning, delivered in the tone she used on the phone with the country club catering manager. My father picked up the extension, breathed for a moment, and said nothing at all. 2 days later, Brett texted me. "Mom hasn't stopped crying since you called. Hope it was worth it." It was. For the first time in years, it was. I did not text that back. 11 days after the phone call, a letter arrived. Not an email, not a text. A physical letter, in my mother's handwriting, on the heavy cream stationery she used for condolence notes and invitations. 4 paragraphs. I have read the last one so many times I could recite it in my sleep. "If you go through with this, understand that you are choosing him over the family that made you everything you are. We will not be there. We will not pretend to celebrate. And if you marry him, you should not expect to walk back through this door as though nothing happened. He is not our kind of people, Nora, and he never will be." That was the line. She wrote it in ink on expensive paper, and she expected me to agree with which side of it I belonged on. I read the letter 3 times, folded it along its existing creases, and put it in a manila folder I had bought that afternoon for tax receipts. I did not understand, yet, why I was keeping it. The part of me that reconciles bank statements and never throws away a confirmation number told me to hold on to it. So I held on. We married at the county courthouse on a Friday in May. There were 14 people there, every one of them a friend or on Daniel's side. His mother, Esperanza, took a bus up from Pittsburgh with a dress in a garment bag and a foil pan of pastelitos she had made at 4 in the morning. She pinned a small white flower to my collar with hands that shook, and she held my face and said, "You are my daughter now too, mija. Welcome." There was no aisle. There was a beige hallway and a fluorescent light, and a magistrate who mispronounced both of our last names. The reception was at a Peruvian restaurant where we pushed 3 tables together, and Daniel's college roommate gave a toast so funny that Esperanza laughed until she had to wipe her eyes. My dress cost $140 from a consignment shop. Daniel wore a gray suit he had bought on a clearance rack. We looked like exactly what we were. 2 people doing the most important thing of their lives without a safety net, because we did not have one. That night, in our apartment, I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the supermarket flowers in a water glass on the dresser, and my hands started to shake. And it was not doubt. It was grief. I had just gotten married, and the 2 people who raised me had decided it was not worth the drive. A week later, I mailed a card home. Inside it, I put one photograph of us on the courthouse steps, both of us laughing at something the photographer said. I wrote, "We are happy. I hope someday you can be happy for us." The card came back 9 days later, unopened, with a red stamp across the front. Return to sender. I stood at my mailbox holding it for a long time. Then I went inside, took out the manila folder, slid the returned card in behind the cream letter, and wrote on a sticky note, "Item 2, wedding photo, returned unopened." That was the day the binder began, though I did not call it a binder yet. The first year was the hardest. I called home 4 times, voicemail every time. I left short, careful messages, the kind where you weigh every word because you suspect it might be the last one anyone listens to. "Hi, Mom. Just calling to say hello. We are doing well. Daniel got a job at a software company. I am studying for the CPA exam. I miss you. Call whenever you are ready." She never called. I sent a birthday card for her, a birthday card for my father, a card at Christmas. All 3 came back with the same red stamp. My father sent exactly 1 message, in February, 5 words long. "Your mother needs more time." No follow-up, no second message, ever. Those 5 words sat in my phone for years, like a thing I could not bring myself to delete. That spring, Brett posted a photo on Facebook. My parents, Brett, and Brett's girlfriend at the time, all of them around the dining table I had grown up eating at. The caption read, "Sunday dinner with the people who matter most." I was not in it. I had not been told it was happening. I printed a screenshot, not to torture myself. I printed it because I had started doing something I could not entirely explain, even to myself. I was keeping the receipts. Every returned card, every call log with no answer, every piece of evidence that my family had quietly decided I no longer existed. By the end of that first year, the manila folder was too thick for its own staple. I bought a proper binder, dark green, with tabbed dividers, one tab for each year.
He is not our kind of people.
My mother's voice surfaced at strange moments, in the cereal aisle, at the dentist, at 2 a.m. when Daniel was asleep and the apartment was dark. I wanted the sentence to stop hurting. It did not stop. It got quieter. The binder got thicker. In the second year, Daniel quit his job. Not recklessly. He had spent 6 months building something on nights and weekends, a software platform that helped small businesses handle regulatory compliance, the tedious, expensive paperwork that companies too small to afford a legal department dreaded every quarter. He understood the systems. I understood the finances. Between the two of us, we understood a problem nobody fashionable wanted to solve: making compliance manageable for companies with fewer than 50 employees. He set up 2 monitors on a folding table in the corner of our one-bedroom with a space heater at his feet and a second-hand whiteboard he had bought for $9.
I came home from my analyst job every night,
Reheated whatever was in the fridge, and sat beside him reviewing financial models until midnight. He built the engine. I built the pricing model and wrote every compliance checklist and tested every feature against the actual federal guidelines. Our company, which we called Ledgerwell, launched 7 months later with 3 customers and a free trial that crashed within the first hour. That same year, I upgraded the binder properly. New tabs, a label on every item, the date written in red pen. Tab 1, Year 1, 6 items. I was not building a case. I was not rehearsing a confrontation. I was a financial analyst, and financial analysts do not throw documentation away. Ever. But I did start numbering each item, and I did start dating each one, because numbers do not lie, and I had decided that, whatever else happened, I would not either. Mateo and Inés arrived on a cold Thursday in February. Twins, 6 pounds each, both of them with Daniel's serious dark eyes. Inés cried for the first 3 hours of her life. Mateo slept through every minute of it. Daniel cried, which I had never seen him do. He held one twin in each arm by the hospital window and said very quietly, "They will know they are loved every single day of their lives. Every single one." Esperanza flew up the next morning and stayed 2 weeks. She cooked, she cleaned, she got up at 3 a.m. to rock Mateo so I could sleep. She brought a blanket she had crocheted in green and cream and 2 tiny silver bracelets, one engraved with each baby's name and birthday. That is what a grandmother looked like. 5 months earlier, I had mailed my mother the ultrasound images. Returned. I mailed birth announcements, 1 card for each twin. Returned. I mailed photographs, Mateo asleep on Daniel's chest, Inés wrapped around my finger. Returned. 3 more items in the binder.
A friend from Harlan Ridge forwarded me, without comment, a message Brett had sent her.
It read, "Her kids don't really have grandparents on her side. That was her decision, not ours." I sat in the nursery with that message on my screen for a long time. Inés was asleep in the crib. Mateo was warm against my shoulder. From the kitchen, I could hear Esperanza humming something old and soft while she washed bottles. My children had a grandmother. Her name was Esperanza Okafor Reyes. She rode a bus up from Pittsburgh every 6 weeks, and she had never once missed a birthday. I printed Brett's message and filed it. Red pen. Dated. By the 4th year, the binder held 19 items. I want to be very clear about this because it matters to the rest of the story. I did not keep the binder out of spite. I did not lie awake at night, turning its pages, feeding some fantasy of the day I would finally get to read it aloud. Most weeks, I forgot it existed.
It sat in the bottom drawer of my desk, behind the tax folders and a stack of old warranty paperwork, gathering dust. But every time something arrived, a returned card, a forwarded message, a voicemail I transcribed because deleting it felt like destroying proof of something, I filed it. The same way every time. Print, label, date, tab. Daniel asked me once why I kept all of it. I told him the truth. I said, because someday the twins are going to ask why they don't have grandparents on my side. And when they do, I don't want my version or her version. I want them to have the facts. I want them to have the receipts and decide for themselves. He nodded. He understood receipts. He was an engineer. Engineers keep logs. By then, Ledgerwell had 11 employees and a real office in a converted warehouse downtown. Daniel worked 60 hours a week. I worked 40 at my firm and another 20 on Ledgerwell's books. We hired a part-time sitter for the twins, and we ate dinner together every night at 6:30. The one rule neither of us would break. The silence from Harlan Ridge had become a feature of the landscape, like the weather. Some days I noticed it. Most days, I did not. Esperanza came every 6 weeks. The twins called her Abuela. She taught Mateo to crack an egg with one hand, and Inés the name of every bird that came to the feeder. I did not know it then, but the green binder in my desk drawer would one day turn out to be the single most important document I owned. More important than my CPA license, more important than our marriage certificate, more important than the securities filing I would sign with my own name on it 5 years later. Years 5 and 6 were quiet, and they were good, and I will not slow the story down with all of them. Ledgerwell grew the way solid companies grow, not in headlines, but in payroll. We bought our first house, a brick foursquare on a street with old maples. I signed the mortgage and thought, nobody handed us this. The twins started kindergarten and fought over the same window seat on the bus. In year 6, my brother got married. I learned about it from a high school acquaintance's social media 4 days after the fact. The wedding had been at the country club at the top of the hill in Harlan Ridge. 200 guests, a band, a 5-tier cake. My mother in pale blue. My father in a new suit. They had not invited me. They had not told me. I zoomed in on a group photo and found my parents in the second row, my mother's arm linked through my father's, both of them beaming. I stared at it for a while. Not out of jealousy. I had had my wedding, 14 people and pastelitos, and the best man I will ever know. I stared because they looked happy. And they looked happy without me. And somehow, that was a thing I still had to learn all over again. I did a foolish thing. I mailed Brett and his new wife a set of monogrammed kitchen towels and a card wishing them every happiness. The package came back 3 weeks later, the tape never even broken. Item 17, gift returned, red pen, dated. I put the binder back in the drawer and sat at my desk listening to Inés singing in the bath and Mateo arguing with Daniel about whether sharks could sleep. That was my family, right there in the next room. And they were enough. Year 7 changed the trajectory of everything. Ledgerwell closed a major round of funding, a venture firm out of California writing a check that put the company's valuation in territory I had only ever modeled in a spreadsheet. I remember the call. Daniel was at the stove, making pancakes for the twins. His phone rang. He listened, said thank you, hung up, and turned to me and said, "They're in." I did the math before the pancakes were done.
We still held a meaningful share of a company now worth a great deal of money.
We were not rich, exactly. Not yet. But the numbers had started moving in a direction I had only ever seen on the right side of a projection. I left my analyst job and joined Ledgerwell full-time as Chief Financial Officer. It was the first time my name appeared on the corporate documents next to his, co-founder, officer of the company. We moved to a larger house in a quieter neighborhood with better schools. The funding round earned a small write-up in an industry newsletter and a 4-paragraph item on a tech news site. The kind of coverage people in the field noticed and everyone else scrolled past. But someone in Harlan Ridge did not scroll past. 2 weeks after the news item ran, a friend from town texted me, "Hey, this is random, but your mom cornered me after the hospital auxiliary meeting and asked me a bunch of questions about Daniel's company. She wanted to know what a funding round means. Thought you'd want to know." I read that text 3 times. My mother had not said my name aloud in 7 years, as far as I knew. She did not know what a funding round was. But she wanted to. The arithmetic was shifting, and Carol Vance had begun, very quietly, to pay attention. That same year, I sent what I knew would be my last birthday card. I had sent one every year. 7 years, 7 returns, each one filed. But this time, I tucked something extra inside. A photograph of the twins at their school's fall festival, in matching flannel shirts with their faces painted. Mateo missing both front teeth. Ines grinning so wide, her eyes had nearly disappeared. On the back, I wrote, "They ask about you sometimes. I tell them you live far away." I mailed it and waited for the red stamp. It came back, but it came back different. The envelope had been opened. The flap was creased and softened, then resealed with a careful strip of clear tape. I held it up to the window. The card was still inside. The photograph was still inside. But someone had taken them out, looked at them, and put them back, deliberately, before sending the whole thing home. I sat at the kitchen table, turning that envelope over in my hands. Someone in that house, my father, I was almost certain, had opened it, had held a photograph of his grandchildren, had looked at their painted faces, and then someone else, my mother, I was certain, had made him reseal it and send it back. He had wanted to keep it. She would not allow it. Item 23. Birthday card. Opened and resealed. Photograph viewed. Returned anyway. I wrote the label with a steadier hand than I expected, because for years I had suspected the truth, and the tape on that envelope confirmed it. My father was not the architect of the silence. He was only the man who enforced it. My mother was the architect. And the blueprint was simple. If she could not control whom I loved, she would erase me from the family entirely. By year 8, Ledgerwell had offices in 2 cities and a customer list that included names you would recognize. Daniel ended up on the cover of a regional business magazine under the headline, "The Quiet Builder." That month, I noticed something on my professional networking profile. Someone in Harlan Ridge had viewed it 3 times in a single week. No name attached, a private setting, but the town was right there in the visitor data. A few weeks later, a national business publication put the company on a list of firms to watch. Small mention, but it was a name everyone knew. And 3 days after Daniel did a long, dry, technical interview on an industry podcast, my friend from town texted again. "Your mom told the whole auxiliary committee that she always knew Daniel had a good head on his shoulders." Direct quote. First time she said your husband's name in years. Always knew. 8 years of silence, and now she always knew.
I did not put that in the binder.
It was hearsay, not a document. But I wrote it on a sticky note and pressed it to the inside cover, because I wanted to remember the exact moment Carol Vance began rewriting the history. She was not proud of Daniel. She was not sorry. She was recalculating. The numbers were getting larger, and my mother, in her own way, had always been an accountant. The forwarded screenshots arrived on a Monday. My friend from town, the one who had kept me loosely tethered to the place I came from, called me at 7 in the evening, and she sounded shaken. She said Brett had accidentally added her to a family group chat, meaning to add someone with a similar number, and that she had sat in it, unnoticed, for 3 days before they removed her. She had taken screenshots. She sent them to me. 6 images. 3 days of unguarded Vance family conversation. I read them in the parking lot of the twins' swim practice with the engine off. Brett laying out that the company's last valuation had been substantial and that an eventual public offering could be enormous. My mother asking how they should approach me. Brett suggesting he reach out first to warm her up. My mother saying no, that she needed to go in person, with a plan, a real one. Brett writing, then make a list. Be specific. She thinks in numbers. Give her numbers she can't argue with. My mother asking how much they should ask for. Brett writing, retirement first, then medical, then the house, then something monthly. Layer it so it reads like supporting the family, not like asking for a handout. And then my father, just once. This doesn't sit right with me. And my mother's reply, Gerald, she has more money now than this entire town. She can afford to take care of her own family. My father did not say anything after that. I sat in the parking lot with the dashboard clock reading 7:19, watching Ines through the glass doors of the pool, doing a clumsy, joyful cannonball off the side. My hands were shaking. Not from sadness, from a terrible, total clarity. 9 years of silence. 9 years of returned cards and ignored grandchildren and a cream-colored letter telling me not to come back. And now that the arithmetic had changed, they wanted to approach me with a plan. I drove home, printed the screenshots, and filed them. Item 26, family group chat. Financial surveillance confirmed. If this is hitting somewhere familiar, if you have ever had someone cut you out of their life and come hurrying back the moment your circumstances changed, drop a comment. Tell me. I think far more of us carry this than ever say it out loud. And if you have not subscribed yet, now is a good time. I told Daniel that night, after the twins were asleep. I showed him the screenshots. He read them once, slowly, the way he reads code, line by line, looking for the thing that breaks. When he finished, he set the phone down and looked at the wall for a long moment. Then he asked, "What do you want to do?" Not, "What should we do?" Not, "Let me tell you how I see it." Just, "What do you want?" I said, "Nothing yet, but I want to be ready." He nodded. That was Daniel. He did not tell me what to feel. He stood next to me while I figured it out. The next morning I called a family attorney, not to sue anyone, not to file anything. I wanted to understand my position. What were our rights if my mother showed up? Could she make any claim on the company, on our assets, on the children? The attorney, a brisk, kind woman named Patrice, walked me through it in under half an hour. No, my mother had no legal standing. Our children's assets were structured in protected trusts. There were no grandparent visitation rights to be claimed in our state, where no relationship had ever existed. And 9 years of documented estrangement made the very idea absurd. I thanked her and hung up. And then I did one more thing that week. Late one night at the kitchen table, I drafted a letter I never intended to send, listing every item in the binder, every date, every returned card, every silence. 26 items, documented and ready. Year 9 was the year the public offering came together. Bankers flew in. We had 3 rounds of meetings in our conference room, the one with a whiteboard that was, by then, a very expensive one. They reviewed our financials, our growth, our retention numbers. They used words like roadshow and pricing range and lockup. Daniel handled the product. I handled the numbers. Every projection, every disclosure, every risk factor. All of it carrying my name as the officer who signed off before it left the building. The process took 7 months. Daniel barely slept. I barely ate. Mateo asked why his dad kept talking to his laptop at dinner. Inez drew a picture of me at my desk with a speech bubble that said, "One more email." That August, our attorney finalized 2 irrevocable trusts for the twins, fully funded, fully protected. Nobody, not my mother, not my father, not my brother, not any future version of any Vance who arrived with a list, could ever touch a dollar of it. I signed the trust documents in a glass-walled office downtown, and when the attorney asked if I had any questions, I had one. I asked what would happen if a family member ever tried to claim access to those funds. She said, "Nothing happens. That is the entire point." I went home, made dinner, helped Inez with her spelling words, and put the trust documents in the fire safe in our closet. And then I noticed something strange. For the first time in months, nobody from Harlan Ridge had viewed my profile. No texts about town gossip, no digital fingerprints anywhere. Quiet. The dangerous kind. 2 months before the offering, my brother texted me. The first time in 9 years. The message came in at 2:17 on a Wednesday afternoon. "Hey, been thinking about you. How are the kids?" 6 words and a question, after 9 years, as though he had been asking all along, as though this were a continuation and not a resurrection. I did not reply for a week. I wanted to see whether he would follow up. He did. A second message. "I'll be in town for work next month. Would love to grab a coffee." Daniel said it was my call. I agreed to meet Brett. Not at our house, at a coffee shop downtown, public and neutral, and with a clock running. He arrived 20 minutes late in a sport coat and new loafers, looking like a man who had practiced being casual in a mirror. He hugged me a beat too long. He told me I looked amazing 3 separate times in the first 10 minutes, and then he started asking questions. How big was the house? Did the twins go to private school? What neighborhood were we in now? Was Daniel still running the company day to day, or had he stepped back? How many employees? Had we taken on any more investment recently? 29 questions. I counted them. Not one of them was, "I'm sorry." Halfway through his latte, I caught his reflection in the window glass. He had his phone tilted toward the lot outside, photographing my car. He was scouting. He was building a report. I let him finish his coffee. I answered everything vaguely, the way you make small talk with a teller at the bank. When we hugged goodbye, he held on too long again. He had asked 29 questions, and the only one that mattered was the one he never thought to ask. I drove straight home and opened the binder. Item 28, reconnaissance visit. 29 questions logged. Vehicle photographed. No apology offered. Then I called Patrice a second time. I told her they were coming. My mother, probably within weeks of the offering, with demands. She asked what kind. I told her about the group chat, about Brett's instruction to layer it so it reads like supporting the family. Patrice was quiet for a second. Then she said, "How thorough is your documentation?" I told her. 30 items, dated, sourced, 9 years. Another pause. Then she said something that reframed the whole thing for me. She said, "Nora, you don't need me for this. You needed me for the trusts and the legal structure, and that's done. What you're describing isn't a legal fight. It's a personal one. And for that, you just need to decide what you're willing to say." She was right. This had never been about lawyers. This was about a woman who was about to arrive at my door because the arithmetic had changed, and about whether I was going to allow her to rewrite 9 years of deliberate silence into a tidy little story about a misunderstanding. That night, I took the unsent letter out of the drawer, read it once, and put it back. I did not need a letter. I had the binder itself. 30 items and counting. It would speak for itself. Ledgerwell went public on a Wednesday in the fall. Daniel and I stood on the floor of the exchange in New York, him in a charcoal suit, me in a deep green blazer, and watched the opening price come up on the board. By the closing bell, the company was worth more than I had the emotional capacity to absorb. On paper, our share was a number with too many zeros to feel real. It felt like a spreadsheet cell somebody had fat-fingered. Check the formula. But I had checked the formula. That was, quite literally, my job. The business press ran features. A national outlet called for comment. A local station back home did a 90-second segment, "Hometown adjacent founders ring the bell," and ran our company photo. The two of us side by side, equal. Daniel and I celebrated with room service noodles in a hotel room. The twins were home with Esperanza. Daniel fell asleep on the couch at 9:15, still in his suit jacket. I stayed awake, not because of the offering, but because of what I knew was coming next. I checked my phone. 5 missed calls, a Harlan Ridge area code, 3 from a number I did not recognize, 1 from my father, 1 from my mother. I did not call back. I set the phone face down and looked at the ceiling. 9 years. And suddenly, I was worth knowing again. My father's voicemail arrived the next morning while I was brushing my teeth. His voice was thinner than I remembered, older, the same careful, deliberate cadence of a man who had spent his life weighing things. But there was a crack running through it. "Nora, I saw you on the news. You and Daniel, on the floor of the exchange. I didn't know what to say, so I'm just calling. I'm proud of you. I've always been..." A long pause, just breathing. "Your mother would like to talk. She has some things she'd like to discuss with you. Please call her back when you can. I love you, sweetheart." I played it 3 times. Sweetheart. He had not called me that since I was a teenager. I'm proud of you. Words I had waited a decade to hear. And then I listened a 4th time, to the structure of it, and I understood. He had called after the offering, not after the wedding, not after the twins were born, not after any of the 7 returned cards, or the ultrasound images, or the birth announcements. After the offering. He was proud of me on paper. He had always been proud of me on paper. What he had never managed was the courage to pick up the phone on a single ordinary day when there were no millions attached to the call. He could have called any day, any year. He chose this one, the one with all the zeros. I saved the voicemail, but I did not put it in the binder.
It was too sad for the binder.
Instead, I sat down on the bathroom floor and let myself feel the whole weight of it, all of it, for about 4 minutes. Then I got up and made the twins their breakfast. My mother's message arrived 2 days after we got home. It was long and carefully composed. No typos, no abbreviations. The kind of thing a person writes and rereads and edits and reads aloud to herself before sending. Nora, I know we have lost a great deal of time, and I think about you and the children every single day. Life is short, and I have come to believe that the things that bind a family together matter more than the differences that once seemed so large. I would like very much to talk about the future, about the children, about what it means to be a family again. There are things that families share with one another. I believe we can find a path forward, if you are willing. I read it twice and counted the words. 68. Every one of them chosen with care, and not one of them was sorry. Not one was, I was wrong. Not one acknowledged that she had cut me out of her life for marrying a man whose mother cleaned offices for a living. The differences that once seemed so large, as though it had been a philosophical disagreement and not a woman who had written, "He is not our kind of people," in ink, and returned 7 years of birthday cards unopened. I did not reply. I screenshotted it, printed it, and opened the binder. Item 29. First message from my mother in 9 years. 68 words. 0 apologies. Red pen, dated. Then I closed the binder, put it back in the drawer, and looked at the framed photo beside my monitor. The 4 of us at the lake last summer, all squinting into the sun. Mateo on Daniel's shoulders, Inez holding my hand. That was my answer, right there in the frame. My friend from town called on a Friday. She told me Brett was telling everyone he had visited me, that I lived in a mansion, that Daniel had struck it rich, that I drove a luxury car, and the kids were in private school. I leaned against the counter. Half of that is wrong, I said. It isn't a mansion, and they're in public school. She said, Nora, that isn't the point. Your mother is planning a trip. She told the women at the salon she's flying out next week. She's already packing. I closed my eyes. I knew. I had known since the group chat, since the funding round, since the profile views and the church committee gossip, and Brett's 29 questions over a latte. The arithmetic had changed, and Carol Vance was coming to collect. But I was not the girl who had left Harlan Ridge at 18 with a scholarship and a card that said, "Come back to us soon." I was a chief financial officer, a mother, a woman with a green binder in her desk drawer, and I was ready. There is an irony I have thought about a great deal since. In Harlan Ridge, news has always moved the way water moves through limestone, slowly, into everything, impossible to stop. When I married Daniel, the whispers had done their work within 48 hours. Carol Vance's daughter married a man from nothing, and my mother had used that social pressure like a tool. She had disowned me, in part, because she could not bear to be whispered about. But now the whispers had reversed. The woman at the salon told my friend. The hospital auxiliary chair told the woman at the salon. Nora Vance's husband rang the bell at the stock exchange. Nora Vance is the chief financial officer. Nora Vance is worth a fortune. And Carol Vance, the woman who ran the gala and decided who summered at the lake, had thrown her own daughter away 9 years ago for marrying beneath the family. People were no longer whispering. They were asking her, to her face. You must be so proud. When did you last see the grandchildren? Will you be out there for the holidays? And my mother had to smile through every one of them, because the truth, that she had cut off her firstborn for loving someone she deemed unworthy, would have shattered the carefully built image she had spent a lifetime maintaining. The same town that had let her cut me loose was now, quietly, asking her why. She could not admit the estrangement without admitting she had drawn the line. She could not pretend everything was fine without somebody eventually asking where I had been every Christmas. The pressure was reversing, and the woman who had wielded it like a scalpel for 30 years was, for the first time, the one being cut. She arrived on a Tuesday at 10:11 in the morning. I know the exact time because I was standing at the kitchen window drying a glass when the car pulled up. She got out slowly. The navy blazer, black slacks, the same small pearl earrings she had worn to every Sunday service of my childhood. A compact rolling suitcase, worn at one corner. She stood on the sidewalk for a full half-minute before she came up the walk, and I watched her take in the house, the porch, the garden beds Daniel had planted in the spring, the way an appraiser takes in a property. The doorbell rang. I opened the door. We stood 3 feet apart. She looked older, more gray than I had pictured, new lines bracketing her mouth. Her eyes, the same hazel as mine, were already wet. "Nora," she said. "Mom." 4 seconds of silence. Then she said, "I've come to talk about the children's future." Not, "I came because I missed you." Not, "I came because I was wrong." Not even, "I came because I love you." I came to talk about the children's future. The children she had never met. The children whose photographs she had sealed back up and mailed home. I looked at the suitcase and at the folded paper in her right hand. "Come in," I said. I did not take her to the living room. I took her to the kitchen, where the light was good, where the refrigerator was covered in the twins' drawings and a photo of Esperanza holding both of them at the shore, all 3 of them laughing, and a world map where Inés had stuck a pin in every country she meant to visit one day. The kitchen was where the truth lived in this house, and the truth was what we were about to have. She sat at the table. I poured 2 glasses of water. No coffee. Coffee was for people who were staying. Her eyes moved around the room and landed on the photograph of Esperanza on the refrigerator, the twins on her lap, all 3 of them mid-laugh. She looked at it for 5 full seconds, and something crossed her face that I could not name. Guilt or envy or both. Then she unfolded the paper. Black ink. 5 numbered lines. And she read them aloud, in the same measured voice she used to read the names off a gala seating chart. A retirement fund for her and my father, $500,000. I said nothing. A college fund for Brett's son, the nephew I had never met, $100,000. Nothing. My father's upcoming surgery, $40,000. Nothing. The remaining mortgage on the family home, $140,000. Nothing. And a monthly support figure of $5,000. Ongoing. She folded the paper, set it on the table between us, and looked at me. "This is what families do for one another, Nora. Your father worked his whole life. He sacrificed for you. It's time to give something back." $840,000, itemized and calculated and presented like an invoice. Not once in the reading had she said my name with the word sorry anywhere near it. Not once had she acknowledged that she was sitting in a house she had refused to visit, asking for money from grandchildren she had refused to hold.
I picked up the list, read each line one more time, folded it, and set it down. Then I stood, walked to my office, opened the bottom drawer, and lifted out the green binder, heavy in the way that 9 years of paper is heavy. I carried it back to the kitchen and set it on the table directly beside her list. 2 documents. Hers, 1 page, 5 lines, $840,000. Mine, 30 items, 9 years, 0 apologies received. She looked at it. "What is that?" "You brought a list, Mom," I said, sitting down and laying my hands flat on the table. "So did I." She stared at the binder, at the red labels visible through the cover, at the sheer thickness of it, the tabs and the screenshots and the returned cards still sealed in their original envelopes. "I don't understand," she said. "You will." I opened to tab 1, and I began to read. I did not raise my voice. I did not cry. I did not perform. I read the way I read a quarterly report to a board, factual and ordered, item by item. Tab 1, Year 1. I laid the first returned birthday card on the table, the red stamp across the front, still sealed. Item 1. The wedding photo, returned. Item 2. The Christmas card, returned. Item 3. I laid them out in a row, slowly, the way you lay out evidence in an audit. No commentary, just chronology. Her mouth opened and closed. She stared at the growing line of white envelopes with their red stamps, each one a door I had tried to open and she had shut. "These are the cards I sent you," I said. "Every year. Every one came back." "Nora, I'm not finished." Tab 2. A transcribed voicemail, 41 seconds, no return call. My father's 5-word text. "Your mother needs more time." I set it down. "It's been 9 years, Mom. How much time did you need?" The tears came then. I had expected them. She covered her face with both hands and made a sound I had heard 1,000 times growing up. The controlled, theatrical cry she used when she wanted sympathy without surrendering ground. The same cry she used when the auxiliary committee chose a different chairwoman. The same cry she used when my father forgot an anniversary. "I was hurt, Nora. You chose him over us. You left." "I didn't leave. You wrote me a letter telling me not to come back. That isn't— I was upset. People say things when they're upset." I turned to tab 4 and read Brett's forwarded message aloud. Her kids don't really have grandparents on her side. That was her decision. She flinched and said, Brett hadn't meant it like that. I read it again, word for word. Then I turned to the last tab, the screenshots, and I read her own words from the group chat. "She has more money now than this entire town. She can afford to take care of her own family." And her face changed. The theatrical tears dried up, and something harder rose underneath, something I recognized from childhood. The look she wore when Brett broke something and blamed it on the dog. Anger. Not guilt. Anger. "You had no right to read that." I looked at her, level and steady. "You had no right to return my children's photographs." The kitchen went quiet. I reached for one specific envelope. The flap was creased, the glue cut and resealed with a thin strip of clear tape. "This one," I said, holding it up. Item 23. The year I put a photo of the twins inside. On the back of the photo, I wrote that they ask about you sometimes, and that I tell them you live far away. I set it on the table. This card was opened. Someone took the photo out and looked at their faces, and then sealed it back up and sent it home. Who opened it, Mom? Nothing. Dad opened it. He wanted to keep it. And you made him send it back. Her hands were flat on the table now, her eyes fixed on the tape.
And then she said something so quietly I almost missed it. I was afraid. I waited. If I had let him keep it, if I had let any of it in, I would have had to admit that I was wrong, that I had thrown away 9 years for nothing, that I had pushed away my own grandchildren because I was too proud to. She stopped and swallowed, and for 1 second, maybe 2, I saw something real in her face. Not performance, actual fear. The kind that has lived underneath anger for so long it has forgotten any other way out. And then it was gone. Her chin lifted, her shoulders squared. But you left us, Nora. You made your choice. The honest moment evaporated like steam off a cup, gone before I could hold it. I put her list on one side of the table and the binder on the other. Your list, I said. $840,000. 5 lines. No apology. I tapped the binder. My list, 30 items. 9 years of silence. 9 years of returned cards and grandchildren you would not look at, and a daughter you erased because she married a man you decided was beneath you. Her nostrils flared. I did not erase anyone. You told the town I had abandoned you. You had Brett tell people my children had no real grandparents. You watched my husband's company for months, and then you came to my door with an itemized bill. I closed the binder, and the rings clicked shut. You didn't come here because you missed me, Mom. You came because the numbers changed. She stood, the chair scraping the tile. After everything we gave you growing up, the clothes, the schools, the opportunities, this is how you repay us? You raised me, I said. That is not a debt. That is what parents are supposed to do. You gave me a card that said, "Come back to us soon." And then you wrote me a letter telling me never to walk through your door again. She had no answer. I watched her search for one and find nothing that fit. You said he was not our kind of people, I said. But for 9 years, his mother was the only grandmother my children had ever known. The words hung in the kitchen like smoke, and I watched them land. The garage door rumbled. Daniel came in through the laundry room, keys in one hand, his bag over his shoulder. He saw my mother. He saw the binder on the table. He saw me. He did not say a word. He set his bag down, crossed the kitchen, put his hand on my shoulder, and sat in the chair beside me. That was all. No confrontation, no speech, just a man sitting next to his wife because she needed him there. My mother looked at him, the man she had refused to accept 9 years earlier. He was in a flannel shirt and worn sneakers, and a watch that had cost less than her earrings. There was nothing about him that announced any amount of money. He was just a man. A good man. A father. A husband. And he was right there, his hand on my shoulder, saying everything without opening his mouth. My mother stared at his hand and at the space between us that held no tension and no performance. And she understood. I had not needed the Vance family. I had built my own. I spoke quietly, The way you say a final figure at the bottom of a balance sheet, complete, with no revision pending. Mom, I am not going to give you money. She opened her mouth. I kept going. And not because I can't afford it. Because the moment I write you a check, you will decide you were right all along to stay away until it became profitable to come back. You'll tell yourself, and you'll tell Brett, that this is what families do. That the silence was just a misunderstanding. That 9 years were only a rough patch. I picked up her list and held it out. They were not a rough patch. They were a choice, your choice. Every returned card, every ignored call, every photograph of your grandchildren that you looked at and sent back anyway. She did not take the list. It hung in the air between us. If you ever want to actually know your grandchildren, not as a line on a financial plan, that starts with an apology. Not to me, to them. And it does not start today. It starts on the day you are ready to mean it. She took the list. She picked up her suitcase. She walked to the front door, and there she stopped and turned and opened her mouth and closed it again and walked out. The door clicked shut behind her. Not a slam, a click. The sound of someone leaving who knew she had lost something she could not buy back. If someone has ever reappeared in your life only after your circumstances improved, I want to hear about it. Put it in the comments. And if this reminded you that your worth was never a number on anyone's spreadsheet, share it with someone who needs to hear that today. 2 weeks passed. Daniel and I did not talk about my mother much. Not because we were avoiding it, but because there was very little left to say. She had come with a list. I had answered with a binder. She had left without an apology, and the math was settled. The twins did not know she had been there. They were at school both times, the arrival and the leaving, and I preferred it that way. They would learn about Carol Vance when they were old enough to understand that some people only see you when the light hits you a certain way. My father called, not on a weekend, on a Tuesday morning while I was reviewing a vendor contract at my desk. Nora, your mother told me what happened. I waited. I should have opened that door for you 9 years ago. I should have picked up the phone. I should have driven out the day the twins were born. I should have done a great many things. His voice broke. I'm sorry. And not because of the money. I don't want your money. I want to know my grandchildren. And I want to know if you'll let me try. I was quiet for a long time. 16 seconds. I counted. I believe you, Dad, I said. But believing you and trusting you are two different things. We'll start slowly. Phone calls, every couple of weeks. No visits yet, no money. Just talking. He agreed. That's more than I deserve. It's exactly what you deserve, I said. Not more, not less. We hung up. I went back to the contract. Brett texted once, a single line. You could have just helped. I did not reply. Some messages are their own answer. My mother did not call. She did not text. She did not write. The silence came back, but this time it was hers to keep. I had said everything I had to say. The next move was hers. The binder is still in the bottom drawer. 30 items, 9 years. I have not added a 31st, and I am hoping I never have to. Here is what 9 years of silence taught me, and it is the only thing I really came here to tell you.
Family is not the people who happen to share your last name. Family is not the people who reappear when your net worth does.
Family is the people who show up when your world is small and your apartment is cold and your babies need someone to rock them at 3 in the morning. The people who ride a bus up from another city every 6 weeks with a crocheted blanket and a foil pan of food they got up at 4 to make. That is family. It was never about money. It was only ever about who showed up. That is my story. 9 years, 30 items, 1 green binder, and a man who walked into a kitchen and put his hand on my shoulder without needing to say a word. If this reminded you that your worth was never about the numbers, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Drop a comment, subscribe if you have not, and I will see you in the next one.